I will speak on behalf of the United States, and I just gave you our views about protests and how we see the connection between protests and the attempts by the Iranian government to influence those protests.
Till I couldn't anymore. I could see the trail that you left. I could see your point till I couldn't anymore.
Do we have any information that Iran has actually financed these protests?
We do.
In any way?
We do.
On an ordinary day, I would never say.
Hamas is a brutal terrorist organization. On October 7, Hamas triggered this war when it massacred 1,200 innocent people, including 44 Americans. Hamas has committed horrific acts of sexual violence and took 250 hostages. There are American citizens who remain captive in Gaza.
All right. Okay. Here we go. Welcome to the big leagues, Madam Vice President. Are you sure you want to do this? Are you really sure that you want to do this? Because I think today, Kamala Harris found out that this is not fun. This is not easy. I mean, surely she knew what she was getting into from watching President Biden firsthand over these last 3.5 years, but this was a tough day. So what you just heard was some short clips from State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller today doing a press conference. And then you also heard a statement from Vice President Kamala Harris and current Democratic Party nominee for presidency, making a statement condemning Hamas, condemning the actions of Gaza and Hamas on October 7th. And you can listen to the whole thing, but basically saying, she said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself. I'll play that whole clip again if we need to, but there's a lot on there. You can go to our Twitter X thing, which is JJ Michael's show, and I've got a link to a portion of the Kamala speech, and I'll link this episode there as well. But it's interesting stuff. So basically what's going on is that the protesters that were outside of Washington when Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu, was speaking before the joint session, they were in Union Square in Washington, and burning flags, throwing feces, fighting police, spray painting slogans like all Zionists are bastards and Hamas is coming and all these things on monuments and such. And, it came to a point where you got to say something no matter who you are. J.D. Vance was beating Kamala up all day today, saying, when is she going to condemn this stuff? Today, to her credit, she did finally come out and say this is unacceptable. But she's going to be in a really, really tight spot now, just like Joe Biden was. But this is what you do. She shadow boycotted the Bibi Netanyahu speech. Did you guys listen to that last night? It's on YouTube. Look it up and listen to it. I listened to the whole thing. It was an interesting speech. It was a very interesting speech. He had a lot of members of the IDF, the Israeli army there. Talked a lot about some of the personal sacrifices made. And he mentioned something that was the topic of the press conference that I just played for you, which is reports from the U.S. State Department that Iran is directly funding and organizing these campus protests and other protests against the war in Gaza. Wait, JJ, I must have misheard you. You did not mishear me. The State Department, according to Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, our State Department, the State Department that oversees the CIA and our diplomats and these sort of things, stated that we have evidence that Iran is directly funding and organizing at least some portion of these protests, giving direct money. Now, you might be wondering, is he just shooting from the hip, just saying things? Well, so are some reporters today. So let's hear what those reporters had to say and what State Department Representative Matthew Miller had to say back to them.
I will speak on behalf of the United States, and I just gave you our views about protests and how we see the connection between protests and the attempts by the Iranian government to influence those protests. And I will let the Prime Minister speak for himself.
Well, do we have any information that Iran has actually financed these protests?
We do.
In any way?
We do. We made that public in the statement that they had supported. Now, again, when I say these protests, I'm not speaking to any one specific protest. And as the Director of National Intelligence made clear, the vast majority of protesters have nothing to do with Iranian influence. That is an important factual thing. But yes, we do have evidence that Iran is supporting
that they actually financed some of these protests?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty serious stuff, guys. You understand what that means? That's pretty serious stuff. Now, you hear the skepticism in the voice of the reporter who's questioning a State Department official. That should be your skepticism. And you should hear those answers. This is why I'm encouraging you guys to don't get all worried about who gets a platform. Be grateful that people have direct platforms to directly speak to you. Listen to them and draw your own conclusions. If you listened to Prime Minister Netanyahu's speech yesterday, whenever, you may have had the same questions as that reporter. I did too. It's like, whoa. I haven't heard about this report. Is this real? It seems a little bit strange that I haven't heard about this. Well, sure enough, these intrepid reporters, the Fifth Estate, asked those questions on our behalf of the State Department. And you heard what they said. Oh, yeah. That's real. That is real. That's real. That's real. The Iranian government is funding and organizing the campus protests that you see. That's real. That's a real thing. All right. So what does that mean? Well, I mean, there's some pretty big implications for that. We're going to talk about that in a second. Why did Kamala come out and say today, after shadow boycotting the Netanyahu speech? What do I mean by shadow boycotting? I mean, she didn't show up even though she's president of the Senate. The vice president is the presiding officer of the Senate. This is how civics works, right? So the Speaker of the House is the presiding officer of the House. The vice president, Kamala Harris, is the presiding officer of the Senate. For her to not show up at a joint session is a really, really big deal. But she didn't, okay? She didn't make a statement that she was boycotting. She just no-showed it. So I'm going to call it a shadow boycott. But, she did that. And then she also had to come back and say this.
Hamas is a brutal terrorist organization. On October 7, Hamas triggered this war when it massacred 1,200 innocent people, including 44 Americans.
Wait a minute. I thought this was a war of genocide. I thought this was Israel just trying to
and took 250 hostages.
Murder children and babies and targeting civilians.
There are American citizens who remain captive in Gaza.
See, this is the problem when you don't listen directly to sources. This is the problem. Biden was getting poor marks on the youth vote, and because of the Palestine issue. This is well known. And the hope was that Kamala would come in and be a little bit less firm in her defense of our ally in the Middle East, Israel. And it seemed in these first couple of days like the hopes of those who are out on these campus protests and such might be realized. And it's a big deal also because the Arab vote in Michigan, which is a swing state, was definitely getting impacted by this. So you had significant numbers of primary voters in the Democrat primary writing in other candidates. And I forget the number. It was high, like 17% or something like this in Michigan, not supporting Biden in the primary. And a lot of folks saying that this issue in the war in Gaza could really hurt the Democrats in Michigan, hurt their base, just not coming out. All right, so this is why the Democrats have lost their mind on this issue, by the way. This is why you have Nancy Pelosi making bizarre statements about Netanyahu being shameful to come in and explain that international overseers have said that they are taking every precaution possible to protect civilians. State Department briefing that I just played you some quotes from, that came up again, and that was verified again by our State Department. By the way, you can find that. Go to state.gov. Or actually, just search for Department Press Briefing, July 25th. State Department Press Briefing, July 25th. You can see the briefing and you can see a transcript. The reason why they've lost their mind on it is because they're worried about losing the presidency, and they're worried that this is polling really badly with the youth vote, which they count on, and Michigan, which they need. Okay. But the reason why Biden didn't lose his mind and abandon all reason on this and pretend like October 7th was okay and pretend like Israel's indiscriminately killing and directly targeting civilians is because he knows it's not true. And he knows every independent report says that they aren't. And he knows that if he gives in to those statements and abandons our ally in Israel, he's going to lose even bigger blocks of moderate Democrat voters who understand some degree of what's going on, and the truth eventually will come out, as it started to come out today and yesterday. Guys, I want to back up for a second. And let's talk about what Iran is, okay? And who Iran is on the national stage. Why this even is such a big deal for Iran to be sponsoring this stuff. I want you guys to understand something, in case it's not immediately obvious, but I don't know. Maybe it's not obvious. Iran is a rogue state. Iran is a rogue state. This is a state that is sponsoring wars and fighting wars and massacring people all over its region, is developing nuclear weapons with the desire to use them against us and our allies. We're talking about a nation that is, on the scale of things, worse than Russia, probably a little bit less out off the reservation than North Korea. Somewhere between Russia and North Korea. Worse than China. Worse than Russia. Maybe not quite as bad as North Korea. And that's debatable. We're talking about a place where women have very limited rights, where as recently as this year, homosexuals are executed. It's illegal to be gay, and they do enforce those laws and execute you if they find out that you're gay. This is Iran. And they have a very sophisticated international intelligence apparatus that is running shadow puppet states, Soviet Union style, all over the Middle East, of which Hamas is one, Hezbollah is another. What is Hamas? Hamas is a widely recognized terrorist organization that runs Gaza. Now, they were elected to run Gaza with like a 70% vote, I believe. That doesn't make them anything other than a terrorist organization that's elected. You know what? The Nazis were elected into power too. A real election. That's not fake. And Hamas had enormous support in Gaza because Iran spent enormous amounts of time propping them up and ginning up that support with all kinds of bribes and promises. That's who Iran is. This is an enemy of democracy, an enemy of freedom, an enemy of liberal people everywhere. And by liberal, I mean in the classical sense, freedom-loving people, people that believe that human beings have the right to determine their religion, their sexuality, their political choices. Iran is an enemy of those people, not just in Iran, but across the world. It is their mission. This is a country so extreme that Saudi Arabia, which requires women to wear burqas and cannot show their faces in public, and they can't drive cars, at least last I checked, Saudi Arabia considers them extreme. This is extremely extreme. If you are attending a protest that is funded and sponsored by these people, you need to look yourself in the eye and wonder where you went wrong. JJ, don't you understand what Israel's doing? It's genocide. Haven't you seen these Palestinian children? Don't you have compassion for them? Of course I have compassion for them. Of course I do. They didn't start this war. And the casualties of war are terrible, awful. That's why you shouldn't start wars. It'd be nice to not have to have wars. We need a ceasefire. We need a ceasefire on reasonable terms, beginning with returning hostages, right? This is pretty basic. And we're negotiating for a ceasefire. The United States, along with Israel, Egypt, I think Qatar's involved. Hopefully it comes soon. But let's just say that your position is that Israel's an apartheid state and that Israel is genocidal and Netanyahu is a war criminal. I can accept that an intellectually honest person can believe that. Okay? I can accept that if you believe the propaganda that is coming from Hamas, that you could believe that what's going on there is the direct target of awful war crimes. And maybe that will come out and that will be true. And I'll be the first person to condemn it if that does turn out to be more than just propaganda from a known terrorist organization. So fine. Israel bad, Iran bad. Okay, I can accept that. But you know what? Let's say it's more than just that. Let's just say since 1948 and before, Israel has been oppressing the Palestinian people, and we've got like South African level apartheid. Okay. Iran bad, Israel worse. If that's what you believe, I'll even go with that. But Iran good, Israel bad? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. What does the State Department, State Department, by the way, Joe Biden's State Department? Let's hear a little bit of what he has to say about the lovely people that are out there burning flags and supporting Hamas.
At the same time, something is seriously wrong when you see people marching through the streets of Washington carrying Hamas banners, literal Hamas banners, carrying the Hamas flag down the streets of Washington, D.C. When you see people spray painting on fountains in Washington that Hamas is coming, when you see them displaying signs calling for the death of Jews, when you see them burning American flags, it's despicable. It's hateful. It runs contrary to the values of this country.
Again, Matthew Miller, State Department spokesperson, Joe Biden's, Kamala Harris's State Department. So I'll give you Iran bad, Israel bad, if that's what you believe. That's not my position, but if that's what you believe, fine. I'll even potentially give you Iran bad, Israel worse. But Iran good, Israel bad, Hamas good, Israel bad? You've lost your mind if you believe that. Even if you believe that Israel is genocidal, Iran is openly genocidal. Iran openly states with their president their goal to wipe the Jewish race off the face of the earth. And so does Hamas. That's what from the river to the sea means. No Jews alive in Israel. Iran wants no Jews alive anywhere. So at a minimum, you have to say, Iran bad, Israel bad. Because Iran, these are bad people. And at a minimum, you should be protesting them both. Let's say that this was conservatives, extreme right, not even conservatives, like the people that believe that Zelensky has manufactured a fake cause and that Ukraine is a bunch of evil Nazis and the only thing that makes them seem like they're innocent and Russia's bad is just that Russia's more powerful, and if Ukraine was more powerful, they'd be blowing up Moscow. Okay, whatever. Let's just say that those people were protesting American spending and funding of that war. And then we found out that Russia was directly financing and organizing those protests. And then we had our State Department confirming that. What would you think? And guys, Iran is worse than Russia. And I don't care how you feel about what is going on and the plight of the Palestinian people. I have many Palestinian friends, including one of my closest friends here in Texas, Palestinian. This is not how you do it, Hamas. This is not how you do it. All right. So, I don't know. The people that are out doing these protests, they're not going to ever hear this podcast. I hope they do, but maybe you're friends with some of these people. But who I'm hoping will listen are folks that are looking at their leaders in Washington, leaders in the Democrat Party, like Joe Biden, maybe now Kamala Harris, and they're feeling betrayed by them. I've had this conversation with friends and folks in my network, feeling like, how could what they believe to be an otherwise honorable man like Joe Biden just abandon these people in their time of need? I'm talking about the people of Gaza. Hopefully, this at least helps you to understand a little bit that that's not the case. He's not abandoning anybody in their time of need. As you heard Kamala Harris say, this began with an invasion of Israel from Gaza with just the most unspeakable treacheries. And we all want it to end. Joe Biden wants it to end. Netanyahu wants it to end. Everybody wants it to end. Everybody except for Hamas wants it to end. All right. Where does this leave Kamala? We're going to have to see. This is an interesting wrinkle. If you've been following us on X, formerly known as Twitter, I didn't think that she was going to come out and condemn Hamas, but she did. So is she going to experience some of the backlash that Joe Biden did? Is this going to hurt her chances to get the youth vote? Is this going to hurt the Democrat chances in Michigan? I don't know. Let's find out. Send me an email if you want to, jjmichaelsshow@gmail.com. Tell me what you think. Follow us. Subscribe to the show. When you subscribe to the show, you just get notifications when a new episode is posted. Follow us on X, JJ Michaels Show. And we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.